I've never done a review video before, so cut me just a little bit of slack. Hey guys, what is up? It's HVL Manga here, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Guys, I am so excited for today's video. You guys have been asking that I literally do a review on any series that I want to, and I never have in the past. But today, that is all going to change. I am going to be reviewing JoJo's Bizarre Adventures Part 1, Phantom Blood. Now, you're probably wondering, why JoJo's? Why did you decide to do this series? Number one, it is such a highly acclaimed series within the manga and anime community. And number two, I thought it would just be kind of fun. I don't know. So basically, this video is actually going to be part of a larger series that I do, which is basically, after I read every part of JoJo's, I am going to film a video like this, reviewing the part. Just as a warning, this video is going to contain spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this series, for JoJo's Part 1, I don't recommend you watching, but if you don't really care or you already know what happens, you want to know my opinion, this is the video for you. I literally, going into the series, the only context that I knew of JoJo's was one, the art style being very unique, two, all of the characters having immaculate outfits, and number three, all of the TikToks about JoJo's with the Let's Groove Earth, Wind, and Fire song behind it. If you're on anime TikTok, you may know what I'm talking about. So, first things first, let's start off with the first volume of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so basically, when I started reading this story, my very first reaction was, what is going on? Mainly because the beginning of the story gives context as to where the mask came from, which later on you learned a lot more about the mask and why it's important. And I opened it, and I saw this page of this woman just getting sacrificed, and I was like, JoJo's, what is we doing? I realized later on that that was kind of essential context that, you know, again, I didn't know at the time, but later on I was like, okay, yeah, I can see why they did that. So in the beginning of the story, you get pretty much just right away introduced to one of our main characters, Dio, which from the beginning, this man's, first off, the art on this man's 10 out of 10. Second off, I knew this guy was sus. He just didn't seem like the nicest dude. I don't know why, he just seemed like he was going to be a problem later on in the story, which is very true, but honestly, he was a problem right from the beginning, and I didn't even know that. So I was, you know, reading the story, and I was like, okay, Dio is a very interesting dude. You know, I think at the beginning it was interesting to kind of see his and his father's relationship, and clearly the relationship between them two was very flawed, because later on you learn Dio was responsible for a lot of what happened with his dad. But basically very interesting context, and then you get a flashback to the story where basically how Dio and the Joestar's life kind of became entwined a little bit. So basically what happened was Dio's dad was like walking around doing his thing. He's a thief, he's poor, you know, he's gonna get money where he can, and he saw that the Joestar's carriage just got wrecked. Like there was an accident, something happened, and he went to this wreck, and he was trying to steal the ring off of, you know, Lord Joestar's finger, which is JoJo's dad. And Lord Joestar was like, oh, you saved me, thank you so much, I am forever indebted to you. And then, you know, flashback, you know, Dio's dad was, you know, on his deathbed, and his dad was like, go to this address, say that I sent you, and they will accept you, and they will love you. So, you know, his dad dies. Okay, honestly, it really didn't have any impact for me because one, he was a criminal, and two, he was literally in the story for 0.5 seconds. So, flash forward, you find Dio going to the Joestar's house and this mansion. The Joestars are a very wealthy family, like they've got money. And the entire way there, Dio was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this estate. This estate is going to be mine. I am going to become the favorite son of Lord Joestar, and I am going to get the inheritance for this estate, which, honestly, I get it. So I would say overall, I kind of enjoyed how Dio got intertwined with the Joestar family and how kind of Lord Joestar felt indebted to, you know, Dio's dad. I thought that was interesting. I think it was definitely kind of unique. And, you know, when he got to the manor, he definitely played the favorite part very, very well. He was very well mannered and, you know, Lord Joestar saw him and was like, wow, this is a good-mannered kid. But then Dio and Lord Joestar's son, Jonathan Joestar, or JoJo, they didn't get along. And, well, obviously they didn't because Dio wanted to take the inheritance. So a majority of the first volume is kind of like the banter between JoJo and Dio, and honestly, out of all the volumes that I read, the first volume, though the context was important, it wasn't my favorite volume. I think it was just because it was a lot of, again, context that you kind of needed. I will say Dio was wild, and he did a couple things to harm Jonathan that I was like reading and I was like, bestie, why are you doing this? Number one, killed JoJo's dog. What did Danny have anything to do with this? And he also went after JoJo's girl, Ariana, I don't know, basically goes after his girl and like kisses her, and I'm like, Dio, chill. So basically Dio, it was just a lot of tension in the first book between Dio and JoJo. I mean, it was just always kind of a competition, and it wasn't horrible to read, but it wasn't like my favorite. Like, I wasn't like, oh, what are they gonna do next? You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, okay, this is context, and I realized that. As I was saying, there was a lot of brotherly conflict, and then near the end of the book, you kind of see JoJo doing a lot of research on this mask that they found. This mask is just like this stone mask, and it's just hanging on their wall, and there's kind of like this lore about it, but they didn't really know, so JoJo does all this research about it, and he basically discovers that this mask was from the Aztecs, I believe, and there's like this whole like story about it. Basically, if you put on this mask, you like basically get superpowers, and it was kind of one of those things where he was like learning that throughout the book. He like did tests on it and all this sort of stuff, and then, you know, Dio learned about that, and Dio, being the dude that he is, was obviously very interested. And later on, they're doing all this research, and they're having their brotherly feuds. But then you kind of start to realize Dio is poisoning Lord Joestar to basically make him die so that he can theoretically get the inheritance. And you also learn at that same point that Dio killed his own father doing the same thing. So basically, JoJo discovers this, that he's trying to poison his dad and trying to kill him. And obviously he exposes it, and you know, everyone hates Dio now, and it's like everyone's against Dio. Then it's like this big fight in this mansion, and they're fighting each other and, you know, getting beat up, whatever. But then Dio takes the mask because he's used it before on a different person, and he kind of saw what it was capable of through the research that JoJo did and that he did. And he just became this superhuman vampire thing. Like, he had immaculate strength. He could basically get his arm cut off and regrow it and be fine. Like, he was just this overpowered individual because of this mask. So at the end of the story, you're basically seeing the beginning of this fight between Dio, JoJo, and like other people in the mansion. And the story ends with Lord Joestar, so Jonathan's dad, basically sacrificing himself to save JoJo, because Dio was trying to kill JoJo. Instead, Dio killed Lord Joestar, trying to kill JoJo in the process. Overall, I think the first volume was a good read. It's definitely, I can see why people say that the first part isn't as good, especially the first volume, because you're gaining that essential context, and you're kind of learning more about the story and how the mask came to be and kind of the mystery behind it. I will say that all of the characters that died in the first volume, I didn't really care about all that much. There wasn't much connection to them. So, you know, Dio's dad, which obviously, if you're sad about Dio's dad's death, I want to have a conversation with you. Lord Joestar, didn't really care about him all that much. Like, I wasn't really attached to him. Obviously, I wasn't like, yeah, he's dead. But it also wasn't like, oh, he's dead. Like, I'm sad about it. It was kind of just like, okay, it is what it is in a weird way. I think for me, I felt bad for Lord Joestar in a sense because he was just a kind dude, trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good person, and homeboy got killed by the person that he welcomed into his home. So I kind of liked the irony in that a little bit. I will say, character-wise, Jonathan Joestar, from the beginning, I just didn't really like the guy all that much. Like, he wasn't a character that I was really attached to. Honestly, throughout this entire first part, I really wasn't attached to Jonathan. I thought he was kind of whiny, and it just kind of was like, he wasn't my favorite. Dio was 110% my favorite. Overall, I thought it was good, and I would argue I liked the parts that more directly dealt with the mask and with the power more than, you know, that kind of essential history and context. Overall, the first book, it was decent, it was good. It was good enough to make me want to read more, and I was glad that I had the second volume because I was like, okay, what's going to happen? I need to know more about this mask. So, book 2 is basically just a lot of fighting, especially in the beginning. You know, there's a lot of power struggle between Jonathan, or JoJo, and Dio. You know, he has the mask, he's super powerful. How the heck are they going to defeat Dio? They're just people. How are they gonna do it? I liked the struggle between the two. Like, yes, Dio is definitely overpowered and more powerful than JoJo at this point, but I still liked the power struggle. Like, it wasn't like Dio was just beating the absolute crap out of everyone and just wrecking everyone. Like, there was a struggle there. I will say I also liked how the fight scenes were drawn. I feel like a lot of manga, for me especially, the fight scenes are just always just kind of difficult to follow. I don't know if that's just me. Yeah, so basically this second volume, again, lots of fighting, and in the end, JoJo, with some help, basically ends up killing Dio. And, you know, at first I was like, wait, is that it? Like, is Dio just dead? Is this where we're at right now? He isn't dead somehow. JoJo kind of walks away, and he's kind of like, oh yeah, like, I won, I did it, I'm so proud of myself, everything's going so well. But I think for me, even though I was kind of like, well, what's going on with Dio? I like when villains or when the antagonists have to go through development themselves. And I like reading about it. Like, I like reading about it in the sense of, like, an actual, like, it's happening in this time versus, oh, 50 years ago he had to go through all this training. Like, I like when both sides have to go through some character development and grow as characters. You know, obviously Dio is growing in, like, a more negative way, I would argue, but I still like how he had to go through that character development. So basically after that, JoJo Jonathan, he is just wrecked. I mean, he's hurt. Homeboy's not doing too great. But then Ariana comes back, and it's a whole reunion, and it's so wholesome, and they love each other. You know, meanwhile, while that's happening, Dio, somehow still alive, which, what is going on? He forms his squad. He basically forms his team. So he was like, yeah, okay, I'm really hurt. I can't do this by myself. I need people to help me. So he basically goes out and recruits some of the worst people that he could find, in the sense of one, I think it was like a mass murderer, like Jack the Ripper or something like that. He basically recruits this guy, and he's like, all right, you can join my team, you can have all this power, but I need you to bring people to me so that I can basically suck out their life force and get back to my normal self, because right now Dio is also a little wrecked. Homeboy's not doing too well. So basically he slowly starts to form this team. So then later on, Jonathan is, you know, slowly recovering, he's getting back to health, and he basically meets his teacher. So I feel like every main character in every story has this teacher that shows them the way, you know, all that sort of stuff. And he meets Zeppeli, Baron Zeppeli. I might be saying that wrong. Love that guy. Great guy, great character. I love him and his backstory, which I'll describe later on. But overall, just really enjoy this character. And then you also meet Speedwagon, which Speedwagon is a classic example of, like, a weak character, at least so far. I don't know, I'm sure he has character development later on. So basically, Jonathan also kind of starts forming his team, and, you know, through meeting Zeppeli, our main character goes through this training. I mean, it's a classic training arc. He basically learns how to use Hamon, I believe. And this is one of my negatives about this story, which I could literally say this for any other story. I feel like the power systems in manga are basically all the same thing. Like there's this weird energy in the universe and all they need to do is breathe a certain way and they can harness it and they can actually be successful. And then, you know, later on, this is I think why I like Zeppeli a lot. I like him a lot because later on you learn more about his backstory. And I think his backstory was actually very, very good. I liked his backstory a lot. So basically, he decided to help Jonathan because he himself has had history with this mask before. And basically, him and his family, I believe, they were adventurers or explorers, or him and his friends, something of that nature. They went out, they were like doing excavating for like historical things, historical items, and you know, all that sort of stuff. I forgot what that job is called. It's a job, but I forgot it. But basically him and his team find this hidden mask, this super powerful mask. And they get it, they're on this boat, and they're heading back to wherever, or they're going somewhere, don't entirely remember. But one of his friends actually decides to wear the mask. So he puts the mask on, and his friend basically kills a lot of people, and it's just a big problem. So Zeppeli has seen this mask in use before, and he knows what it's capable of, and he knows that this mask needs to be stopped. Another thing that I really liked about him and his backstory was when he was going through, you know, similar training to what Jonathan was going through in the sense of learning how to master the energy force of the earth. He basically was told a prophecy saying that he would one day die in order to, I forgot exactly what it was, but basically he was going to die in order to help or save the cause of the mask or something of that nature. And you know, I read that and at first I was like, well, what do you mean? Okay, whatever, kind of confused. Later on it's much more clear, but I just really liked that prophecy aspect of it as well. Later on in this story, basically they learn that Dio, homeboy's not dead. He is very much alive. He's a little crusty, but he's alive. So basically, Dio continues to form this team. He gets other people, but basically what he can do is he can reanimate dead things, dead people. So he decides to reanimate some of the most brutal and intense people in history. They were just historical figures that were known for being absolutely brutal. And I really liked this part as well. I really liked how they decided to give backstories to these characters that he reanimated, rather than just saying, oh, he, you know, resurrected a mass murderer, or oh, he resurrected a serial killer. Like, he resurrected people from history and they gave context for these people. I really liked that. It was interesting to read about, and I think it gave more depth to the overall story. But as I was reading this, I was like, okay, what can Dio all do with this mask? And you know, even after reading these 3 volumes, I'm still kind of left wondering, like, what all can this guy do with this mask power? Basically, the second volume ends with, they're like in this wide just area and the fight's about to break out, and that's basically how volume 2 ends. I would say in general, I liked volume 2 probably a little bit more than volume 1, but nothing like crazy. I think I liked it because I liked seeing how the teams were being formed and how, you know, the backstory for characters. I always really appreciate backstory. I think it can add a lot to a series. I also kind of liked how it got more onto the battle side and, you know, seeing Jonathan develop, seeing Dio develop. Overall, I really liked volume 2, and I was ready and glad that I had volume 3. So, we are in the last volume of part 1. Are you still here? I don't blame you if you're not. Regardless, the end, so basically the start of book 3, basically all of book 3 is just a whole lot of fighting, if I had to put it simply. It's just a lot of fighting between all of the characters, and, you know, eventually Jonathan and all of them defeat the 2 individuals that Dio reanimated, and then it basically goes to Dio and Jonathan fighting. But in this story, throughout the battle, you know, Zeppeli actually died. And that's, as I was saying before, the prophecy was being fulfilled of him having to die for this cause and to save people. And I really liked seeing that come to fruition, and I think through his death, Jonathan was finally like, okay, I've had enough of this. I am sick of it. So basically, you cut to Dio and Jonathan fighting, and it's just this whole thing, and poor Dio just cannot catch a break. This guy's head just gets cut off, and Jonathan's like, I did it. I killed Dio. I've saved the world. And I was like, is this finally the end of Dio? But then you see one of Dio's little henchmen come and collect his literal severed head, and somehow Dio is still alive. I think this part of the story made me think, how in the crap are you supposed to kill this guy? Is he just forever going to live? So basically after that, Jonathan's like, I did it, saved the world, you're welcome. He goes and marries Ariana, and it's just good stuff. And then they find themselves on a ship. I don't exactly know why. I think maybe they were traveling somewhere. Maybe they were on their honeymoon, not entirely sure. They're on this ship and they're having a good time and they're drinking and they're newly married. It's a happy time. And then on the ship, JoJo and Ariana are not the only ones there. Dio is also there, or Dio's head. Dio's head and his henchmen are there because Dio wants to occupy JoJo's body. So basically we have this head in this literal like freaking glass container. I found it so funny, I'm not gonna lie. His head is just in this glass container trying to get and kill JoJo to get his body. And you know, JoJo and Ariana are having a good time, and then JoJo notices one of Dio's henchmen. JoJo was like, wait a minute, I thought I killed him, there's no way that he's alive. He goes, tracks this guy down, and realizes that Dio is very much somehow alive. But then when he discovers this, Dio literally shoots like lasers out of his eyes, which, what can't this guy do? Literally, what can't this guy do? He shoots lasers out of his eyes and like harms JoJo, but then JoJo is able to fight still somewhat, and basically they start the ship on fire. The end scene is with JoJo holding Dio's head, and basically the ship just explodes. One of the last lines in the manga, it said, Jonathan Joestar died at X date, whatever. Where's our main character? Is our main character gone? What's going on? So basically the end of part 1 left me with a lot of questions that I have yet to have answered because I have yet to read part 2. But I was just like, okay, so Jonathan's dead. Who's our main character now? Is Dio still alive? If so, how is he alive? I mean, I guess it wouldn't be surprising if he was still alive because he literally got his head chopped off and like burned alive and he's still somehow living. Who's gonna be Dio's next body? So many questions. So now I'm just gonna kind of go over some things that I liked about the story, some things that I didn't like about the story, just kind of in general, just kind of a generalization of the first part. What I didn't really love, I think the beginning was kind of slow, or at least the middle of the first volume was kind of slow. Again, I get it, it was essential context that we needed to understand, but it was like at one point we were playing football and I'm like, why are we playing football when there's this Aztec all-powerful mask just hanging on this wall? Like it was kind of slow. Also, another complaint that I have about the series, and I think a lot of people probably think this, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Why are the colored pages in JoJo's orange? I wish it was actually in color. I didn't really love the colored pages, it didn't do it for me. The next one, another complaint that I have, again, I kind of described this a little bit before. I could say this for literally any manga series. I didn't love the power system, the hormone at least, just like the energy in the universe, that's literally right out of any other manga. I get it. Like, again, I could say this for literally any other series, but I was just kind of like, it was kind of a little lackluster. I think the mask power kind of makes up for it, and I think maybe the hormone was kind of an afterthought in comparison to, you know, sorting and figuring out how the mask's power would work. I think another thing that I didn't really love, and maybe it's just because, maybe it's just me, you know, the characters dying in the story, I didn't really have much, like, I didn't really care that they died, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like a death in a story, I want it to be impactful. Like, yes, it was impactful to our main characters, and, you know, that's obviously the point. But it really didn't hit me in any way. All of the characters that died in this first part, I was kind of like, okay. I think, you know, arguably the one that was the hardest, or the one that I was the most sad about, was Zeppeli, but even then I was kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of whatever. And the last thing that I can just think of right off the bat, why did Dio kill Danny the dog? Honestly, very disrespectful. I did not like that part. Homeboy just burned a dog. So let's talk about some things just in general that I liked about this story. I loved the art. Again, I think the art took me a second to kind of get used to it, but once I did, I really, really appreciated it. It's so unique and it's so detailed, and the outfits that they wear are just absolutely immaculate. Everyone looked so good, and I think I loved how I was able to follow the fight scenes decently well. Again, with a lot of, manga, it's so hard to follow the fight scenes because it's just like, how do you read a fight scene? You know what I mean? Just overall, I thought the art was really, really good. They did a really good job, and I'm excited to see how the art progresses. I loved Dio. I think his character is so good. I don't know why, there's just something about him. I love how he just, I think I probably like the best how Homeboy just keeps getting destroyed, but he doesn't give up. Like, there is such a level of motivation and tenacity in that character that I think I really appreciate. Like, Jonathan just kept destroying that guy, but he didn't care. He just kept doing his thing. And I think I really like him just overall as a character, and I'm really excited to see how his character develops. Another thing that I actually really enjoy about this series is I love kind of the historical elements behind it. I love how the mask has like history behind it, and the character and the people that, Dio resurrected had history behind them. I think when you have something that has like history and it's not just like random things you just find out in a field, I think it just really richens and like deepens the story itself. Overall, I'm excited to get more into this story. I think it is really well done. It is very interesting, and I think I'm just very interested to see how the story goes. I think with Jonathan dying, I was like, well, what are we doing now? I will say the reading experience of this series, especially in these hardbacks, is so nice. I love me a hardback book. Just really good quality. It is $20 a volume, so it is kind of expensive. I only have parts 1 and part 2 because part 3 and part 4 is an investment that I will get eventually, but it is an investment. Thank you for watching. This is my very first review video. I hope you liked it. It was kind of fun to film. It took a little bit of work on the front end to film, to like prepare for, but it was overall good, I think. Let me know if you like these sort of review videos. I think this review is definitely more intensive because it's a part rather than just like a book. And there's a lot of stuff going on in these books, so if you want more reviews, give me suggestions in the comments down below. I would love to review more stuff for you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.